Its grandeur stood as a testament to a bygone era, a relic of the Victorian age that seemed almost untouched by the passage of time. Its wooden frame, weathered yet strong, spoke of years gone by. Each beam, each plank, told a story of resilience and endurance. Standing firm against the relentless march of time and the elements, ivy clung to the walls, whispering secrets in the mountain breeze. The vines seemed to weave a tapestry of history, their tendrils reaching out as if to share the tales of those who had come and gone. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of aged wood and forgotten memories. The dim lighting cast long shadows, creating an atmosphere thick with nostalgia and a hint of melancholy. A grand fireplace dominated the lobby, its dying embers casting flickering shadows that danced on the walls. The warmth of the fire was a stark contrast to the cold, eerie feeling that seemed to permeate the room. We shivered, a strange chill settling over us despite the warmth of the fire. It was as if the very walls of the hotel held onto the cold, a reminder of the countless winters it had endured. The old caretaker, a man with eyes as deep and dark as the surrounding woods, showed us to our room. His presence was both comforting and unsettling, a living link to the hotel's storied past. His smile seemed strained, as if he carried the weight of the hotel's secrets. There was a sadness in his eyes, a burden that he bore silently, hinting at the mysteries that lay hidden within the hotel's walls. He handed us the key, a heavy, tarnished thing, and mumbled a warning we couldn't quite make out. The key itself felt like a relic, its weight a physical manifestation of the history it unlocked. Then, with a final, unsettling glance, he was gone. His departure left us with a sense of unease, as if we had just stepped into a story that was still being written, a place out of time where the past and present coexisted in a delicate balance. Sleep came slowly that night. The silence of the mountains was broken only by the creaking of the old hotel and the wind whistling through the pines. Just after midnight, I woke with a start. Sarah slept soundly beside me, but something had stirred me. A whisper, faint and chilling, seemed to come from the very walls themselves. I sat up, heart pounding, and listened intently. There it was again, a soft, mournful sigh like someone in pain. I crept out of bed, careful not to wake Sarah. The air felt colder now, charged with an unseen energy. I walked to the door and pressed my ear against the cold wood. The whispering was louder, more insistent. It seemed to be coming from the hallway. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The single flickering light bulb did little to penetrate the gloom. Shadows stretched and twisted, taking on menacing forms in my imagination. The whispering was clearer now, a chorus of voices, faint but filled with an unspeakable sadness. I followed the sound, drawn down the hallway by a morbid curiosity I couldn't explain. At the end of the hallway, I found a door slightly ajar. Light spilled out from the room beyond, along with the sound of soft weeping. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. This was madness, I knew, but something compelled me forward. The room was small and sparsely furnished. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. And in front of the fireplace, her back to me, sat a woman. Her hair, long and black, cascaded down her back, hiding her face. She was speaking softly, her voice a low, mournful moan. As I stepped into the room, the woman slowly turned. My blood ran cold. Her face was as white as death, her eyes two empty sockets staring through me. She opened her mouth as if to scream, but no sound emerged. Then in a blink, she was gone. The chair where she had been sitting was now occupied by a full-length mirror, and staring back at me with a look of pure terror was my own reflection. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet, and crashed into the wall. The impact sent a jolt of pain through my shoulder, but the adrenaline coursing through my veins dulled the sensation. The sound of my fall echoed through the silent hotel, reverberating off the walls and amplifying the eerie stillness that surrounded us. It was as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, the door burst open and Sarah stood there, her face pale with fear. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the dim light of the hallway, and her hands trembled as she clutched the doorframe. "John," she gasped. "What is it? I heard a noise. Her voice was barely a whisper, quivering with the same terror that gripped my heart. Her words were cut short as the mirror in the room began to glow. A strange, otherworldly light emanated from its surface, casting eerie shadows on the walls and floor. A cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the fire in the hearth and plunging us into darkness. The sudden chill made us shiver, and the once warm and inviting room now felt like a tomb. And then we saw them. Shadows began to coalesce in the corners of the room, taking on a more defined shape with each passing second. Two figures, shimmering and translucent, materialized in the space between us and the mirror. Their presence was both mesmerizing and terrifying, like a scene from a nightmare brought to life. A man and a woman, their faces etched with pain and sorrow, their eyes fixed on us with a chilling intensity. Their expressions told a story of suffering and loss, a tale that transcended time and space. Sarah screamed, a high-pitched sound that tore through the silence. Her scream seemed to echo endlessly, bouncing off the walls and amplifying the terror that gripped us. I pulled her close, my own heart pounding against my ribs. The fear was palpable, a living, breathing entity that wrapped itself around us, squeezing tighter with each passing moment. We were trapped, caught in the grip of something ancient and evil. The room seemed to close in on us, the walls pressing closer as if trying to suffocate us. The figures drifted closer, their forms solidifying with each passing moment. Their movements were slow and deliberate, as if they were savoring our fear. The air grew heavy, making it difficult to breathe. Each breath felt like a struggle, the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on our chests. The stench of decay filled our nostrils, choking us. It was a putrid smell, like something long dead and forgotten, now awakened to torment us. The combination of fear and the foul odor made it almost impossible to think clearly. Our hands trembled as we clung to each other, seeking comfort in the only source of warmth and familiarity in the room. The ghostly figures continued their approach, their eyes never leaving us. The lights flickered, casting brief moments of clarity before plunging us back into darkness. Each flicker seemed to bring the figures closer, their forms becoming more defined and menacing. Our eyes were wide with fear, unable to look away from the approaching specters. It felt as though we were caught in a trance, powerless to move or speak. The ghostly figures reached out, their hands extending towards us with a slow, deliberate motion. The air around us grew colder, and the sense of impending doom was overwhelming. We stood there, frozen in place, as the figures loomed over us. The room seemed to close in, the darkness swallowing us whole. In that moment, we knew we were not alone, and the terror we felt was shared by the spirits that haunted this place. Suddenly, as if sensing our terror, the figures lunged. Their movements were swift and unnatural, like shadows come to life, their ghostly forms flickering in and out of existence. It was as if the very darkness around us had taken shape and was now hunting us. We screamed again, a primal sound of fear and desperation. The echoes of our cries bounced off the walls, amplifying our terror. The faces around us mirrored our own horror, eyes wide with panic, mouths open in silent screams. I grabbed Sarah's hand and we ran, stumbling blindly through the darkness, the spectral wails of our pursuers echoing behind us. Our breaths came in ragged gasps, each step a desperate attempt to escape the nightmare that had engulfed us. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, a labyrinth of shadows and echoes. Down the hallway we fled, each step fueled by pure adrenaline. The walls seemed to close in on us, the air thick with an oppressive sense of dread. Every corner we turned, every door we passed, felt like a potential trap, a place where the shadows could reach out and pull us into the abyss. We burst through the door of our room and into the relative safety of the hallway beyond. The dim light of the corridor was a small comfort, a fragile barrier against the darkness that pursued us. We didn't dare look back, fearing that the figures would be right behind us, ready to drag us back into the nightmare. Without a word, we raced through the hotel, our bare feet slapping against the cold hardwood floors. The sound echoed through the empty halls, a rhythmic reminder of our desperate flight. The hotel, once a place of refuge, had become a maze of terror, each step taking us further from safety and deeper into the unknown. Down the grand staircase we flew, past the darkened lobby and out into the night. The once grand and welcoming space now felt like a cavern of shadows, the darkness pressing in from all sides. The lobby's silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of our frantic footsteps. The cool mountain air hit us like a slap, invigorating us, urging us forward. It was a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside the hotel, a breath of life in the midst of our terror. The night was our ally now, its darkness a cloak to hide us from our pursuers. We didn't stop running until we were far from the hotel, its looming silhouette a dark stain against the horizon. The further we got, the more the oppressive weight of fear began to lift, replaced by a fragile sense of relief. The night was still and quiet, the only sound our labored breathing and the distant echoes of our flight. We had escaped, but the memory of the terror would haunt us forever. We spent the rest of the night huddled in the rental car, too terrified to even speak. As dawn broke, casting a pale light over the mountains, we finally allowed ourselves to believe we were safe. But the events of the night weighed heavily upon us, casting a long shadow over the day ahead. We returned to the hotel to gather our things, determined to get as far away from that cursed place as possible. The old caretaker, his face a mask of indifference, handed us our bags. He seemed unsurprised to see us, as if he had expected us to leave in such a hurry. When we asked him about the previous night, he simply shook his head and muttered something about restless spirits. We left Whispering Pines that morning, our honeymoon forever tainted by the horrors we had witnessed. We tried to forget, to move on, but the memory of that night lingered like a shadow. The whispers, the faces in the mirror, the feeling of icy dread, these things stayed with us, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of our world. Even now, years later, I sometimes wake in the dead of night, heart pounding, the echo of those whispers ringing in my ears, and I wonder about the spirits trapped within the walls of that old hotel. What sorrows bind them to that place? What pain echoes through the years, seeking solace in the darkness? The Whispering Pines hold their secrets close, a chilling reminder that some